Hello everyone, Cerberus here at the gates bringing you a very special FSW collection. Let's get started. Today we have the United States penny, the 1 cent piece from the USA. Featured on this 1 cent piece is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, who lived from the 12th of February, 1809 to the 15th of April, 1865. He was the 16th President of the United States from 1861 until his assassination in 1865. He led a nation through civil war, preserved the Union, abolished slavery, strengthened the government, and modernized the U.S. economy. Today we have the wheat cent. The wheat cent with the wheat symbol that was minted between 1909 to 1958, compared to the memorial cent. It was used from 1958 and on until present. The memorial cent. Okay. The wheat cent. The wheat cent. On the top there's Latin. Latin e pluribus unum, meaning many uniting into one, which alludes to the union between the states and the federal government. Uniting into one. Alright, let's get on with the spread. Starting with the 1941 Lincoln head cent. 1941 Lincoln head cent was 887 million cents minted. 1941 minted in 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, minted in bronze. Next we have the 1941D. 1941D. The D stands for the Denver Mint, minted in Denver, with 128.7 million cents minted in 1941. The Denver Mint. Then we have the 1941S. 1941S, minted at the San Francisco Mint. The San Francisco Mint, 92.4 million cents, minted in 1941 at the San Francisco Mint. Now the first one we have here, the first 1941 with no letter below the date, usually means they are minted at the Philadelphia Mint. No marking equals Philadelphia Mint. Moving on to the 1942. 1942 Lincoln head cent. No marking means it's minted in Philadelphia, with 657.8 million cents minted. Philadelphia, 1942. We have a 1942 minted in Denver, 206.7 million cents in 1942, minted in Denver. 1942S. 1942S. 85.6 million cents minted in San Francisco in 1942. Moving on to the 1943 steel. They're odd-colored 1943 steel. In 1943, at the peak of World War II, the cents were minted in steel because of the war demands for copper. And this is the 1943, also known as the wartime steel cent, Wartime steel cent. 1943 steel, no marking at the bottom, minted in Philadelphia with 684.6 million cents. We have the 1943 D. 1943 minted in Denver with 217.7 million cents. And the 1943 S. 1943 S. From San Francisco, also in steel. A zinc-coated steel. As you can see, it rubbed off. 1943 in Philadelphia versus the 1943 from San Francisco. The copper saved from the pennies was enough to meet the combined needs of 2 naval cruisers, 2 naval destroyers, 1,243 B-17 Flying Fortress aircrafts, 120 field guns, 120 howitzer cannons, or enough for 1.23 million shells for large field guns. The copper saved was able to build all those guns, aircraft, and ships. 1943 wartime steel cent. Moving on. The 1944. The 1944 penny is back to the bronze color. However, it is minted in brass due to the complaints about the 1943 pennies looking like dimes. So the material was changed to brass. Brass. 1944, no letter underneath the date, meaning it's from Philadelphia, with 1.4 billion pennies minted in 1944. There's a 1944 D, minted in Denver, 430 million pennies minted in Denver. 1944 S, 282.8 million pennies minted in San Francisco. The 1944 pennies were changed to brass, 95% copper, 5% zinc, and the brass from spent ammunition casings were used to mint these pennies. During the war, they had lots and lots of brass casings to mint these pennies in. In 1945, no marking underneath the date. So 1945, this one was minted in Philadelphia. 1 billion pennies were made. 1945, 1 billion were minted in Philadelphia. 1945 D, 226 million were minted in Denver. And a 1945 S, 181 million pennies minted in San Francisco. And these were still used. The brass casings from ammunition, 95% copper, 5% zinc. 1945 Lincoln head cent. Moving on to the 1946. 1946, no marking from Philadelphia, 991.7 million pennies minted in Philadelphia. 1946 D, 319.7 million pennies minted in Denver, that Denver mint. And 1946 S, 198.1 million pennies minted in San Francisco. 1946 was the last year they were using brass from ammunition casings. Brass composition of 95% copper, 5% zinc. Lincoln head cent, last year of the brass ammunition casing pennies. Moving on to the 1947s. 1947. Ammunition casings were no longer used in the pennies and were minted in bronze again. Bronze being 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. 1947. No marking. 190.5 million pennies minted at the Philadelphia Mint. 1947D. 164.9 million pennies minted at the Denver Mint. 1947S. Only 99 million pennies minted at the San Francisco Mint. San Francisco Mint. Moving on to the 1948s. 1948 Lincoln had sent 317.6 million from Philadelphia, 172.6 million from Denver, 81.7 million from San Francisco. Minted in bronze, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. Moving on to the 1949. 1949 Lincoln had sent with 217.5 million minted in Philadelphia. 1949 Lincoln had sent with a D, 153.1 million cents minted in Denver. And 1949 S, 64.3 million minted in San Francisco. San Francisco. Moving on to the 1950s. 1950, back to the bronze composition with 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. The ammunition casings were no longer used after 1946. 1950, no marking from Philadelphia, 272.7 million. 1950D from Denver, 335 million. 1950S from San Francisco, 118.5 million. Lincoln had sent the wheat cent with the wheat tail side. As a recap of the steel cents versus the bronze cents versus the brass cents. In the back, the wheat cent. The wheat cent. Well, it's time to lock these coins back up, and thank you for joining me. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next spread.